Thank you so very much for dropping by this video. For anyone who's new to this channel is about understanding the difference between authentic non-duality and nonsense non-duality, often called Neo-Advaita. I cannot believe I am sitting in my car. I'm in between plans, and I'm sitting in my car broadcasting live. The world has become a very interesting place. So, I started this channel to expose one fake non-duality teacher. And also, that was my motive. That was my conscious motive. But the long and short of it was, in hindsight, it was really to help me break free of Neo-Advaita, and hopefully to save some other people some time and suffering, because at that point I'd been in Neo-Advaita for almost 18 or 19 years. And, I initially vigorously started going after this one teacher, but I very quickly realized that this teacher was just one very tiny blip. Granted, one of the most popular Neo-Advaita teachers, but really still just a blip on the vast wave of Neo-Advaita nonsense. And so I've been speaking out against Neo-Advaita for 4 years now, I think, maybe even 5 years at this point. And I have watched Neo-Advaita spread like a virus. It is just taking off. I don't even have words for, I got introduced to Neo-Advaita in 1999, and the internet was still very, wasn't new at that point, but it was nowhere what it is today. And the internet has really given the opportunity for Neo-Advaita to just really flourish. And boy, is it flourishing. I just recently came across this channel. This guy, he has on other Neo-Advaita teachers, and they just, blah, blah, blah. And I actually left a comment, which I never do. But the title of his channel was just so obnoxious, and like in the title, basically claiming he was enlightened. And I basically just pointed out, like, you're not enlightened, and this is ridiculous. And his response was classic Neo-Advaita. He's just said, it's a bunch of nobodies talking about nothing. If you're looking for enlightened people, you've come to the wrong place. And I just don't even have words for how ridiculous it is. And these, on the surface, it's just a word game, but this little word game is literally wrecking people's lives. I'm one of them, and it doesn't wreck every person's life who gets involved with it, but it sure took me pretty low. And I've really come to realize that it truly is an addiction, in the sense that an addiction is something that you use to cope with life that ends up turning into a problem, and that is not easy to stop doing. That's what differentiates, an actual addiction. Like let's say someone has a really horrible thing happen to them, and they get, every night for a week they get drunk, and then they stop. Like, that's not an addiction. That's just an unhealthy, not the healthiest coping strategy. But an addiction is where you get involved in a loop, and it's very hard to break free from that loop. And these little word games that these people play, like, oh, it's just nobody talking about nothing. So on the one hand, that's just like a sentence, right? It's just a sentence. It's just some words. But what those words do is they create a dissociative state. Like, if you start to think, I'm nobody talking about nothing, Like, even as I say those words, I mean, you can say those words with me and see how it feels. Like, I'm nobody talking about nothing. It creates this detachment and this kind of like, just kind of, how to even describe it. I'm nobody talking about nothing. It creates a sense of depersonalization. It's not just attachment. It's like I just start to dissociate from everything when I think that way and speak that way. And so that's how it becomes an actual addiction. And so I invite you to just do it just repeat the sentence for like 30 seconds. I'm nobody talking about nothing. I'm nobody talking about nothing. I'm nobody. What happens to me is I start to space out from the world, but more importantly, I start to space out from my thoughts, my feelings, any sense of individuality just kind of melts away. Like everything melts away. And see, Neo-Advaita is about dissociation, whereas actual Advaita Vedanta is about integration and unity. Like Neo-Advaita is literally about turning away from everything, the world, your thoughts, your feelings, whereas traditional Advaita is about recognizing the oneness of everything. And that doesn't happen through dissociation. Dissociation actually creates a kind of duality. Like, all of this is false, only nothingness is real. That's why Neo-Advaita teachers are obsessed with nothingness, because their philosophy is nihilistic, and what they're doing is literally dissociating into kind of this void-like state. And so then their whole life becomes about trying to maintain this void-like state and turning away from the world, turning away from their thoughts, turning away from their feelings, turning away from their personality. That doesn't eliminate the world. That doesn't eliminate their personality. That doesn't eliminate their thoughts and feelings. It just suppresses them, just as an addictive behavior would, just as getting drunk or overeating or binge scrolling on the internet. Those things don't solve problems. Those things don't eliminate individuality. They just numb them out. They just push them out of awareness, but they don't eliminate them. Welcome to my live viewers. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to type them in. So it's so interesting because, most addictions are about a substance or a behavior, but the Neo-Advaita addiction seems to be about a set of ideas. And of course, there's the practice of self-inquiry, and there's attending satsang, but primarily, the addiction is primarily this addiction to certain types of thoughts. And I've seen it and I've done it myself, where, I start to, when I was caught in that web, any thought that would then take me out of the dissociative state was seen as bad or was seen as a problem. And I would attack or criticize it. And you can see this in Neo-Advaita satsangs. Anything pertaining to the world, anything pertaining to individuality or personality or like being a functional human being is vigorously attacked, including the preparatory practices, which are, in traditional Advaita Vedanta and traditional non-duality, like you have to become a functional, balanced person before you go on that deep, you could say the deep non-dual quest. So lately, when I think about like, why do I keep making these videos? Again, part of it is still my own healing recovery process. But what I'm starting to see happen is Neo-Advaita is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's starting to spread. it's starting to spread into other spiritual philosophies and other spiritual paths that aren't non-dual. You know, I participate in different 12-step programs, and I was just talking to this guy. He gave a really cool he was a speaker at a meeting I went to. And so I talked to him after the meeting, and I just started to feel like something's not right as I was talking to him. I'm like, I don't know what it is, but something just doesn't feel right. And lo and behold, after talking for about 10, like, for those of you who are superhero fans, like, my spidey sense was tingling. I was like, something just doesn't feel right. And then after about 12 minutes of talking, he started to say some Neo-Advaita kind of things. He's like, well, I let go of all opinions, because as soon as I think I know something, then that blocks me from the present moment. So I let go of all my opinions, and I just let go of the mind, and I don't think, and other things like that. And that's a cool thing to do in the moment. You know, like, it's no fun being trapped in the mind when the mind's just like, but that's not a sustainable, nobody can do that permanently unless you're like a great saint or sage. And to get to that point, you have to do all sorts of preparatory practices. But on top of it, that's not what actual Advaita Vedanta teaches. Like, that's just complete nonsense. And anyone who teaches something like drop the mind or just let go of all your thoughts is teaching a crazy. It's so funny because Neo-Advaita teachers will be like, drop the mind, and then they'll talk. They're like, let go of all your opinions and let me just fill your mind up with my opinions. Like, believe what I'm saying, but don't believe anything else. Like, that's really the Neo-Advaita message. Like, drop all concepts except the concepts I'm giving you. But like, it was just such a shocker. And then I just realized, wow, Neo-Advaita is really spreading. Neo-non-duality is really spreading. And the long and short of it is, in my view, Neo-Advaita, you know, like I said, I started off this channel to critique one particular Neo-Advaita teacher. And then what I realized is that Neo-Advaita teacher was just a very small part of the large Neo-Advaita phenomenon, or Neo-Advaita wave. And now what I've realized is that Neo-Advaita is just a significant part of this larger phenomenon, which you can call spiritual bypass, you can call it false spirituality. A great phrase I heard was false light. Something that appears to be true, appears to be spiritual, but it appears to take you in this upward path, but actually will take you downwards, all the while lying to you that this particular path is somehow spiritual or helpful or virtuous. I love the phrase false light. That just really captures it. So whatever you call it, whether you call it false light or spiritual bypass or unbalanced, unhealthy spirituality, it's like this worldwide phenomenon. And you know, and Neo-Advaita is just it's a very flagrant example of it. You know, very flagrant example of spiritual bypass, a very flagrant example of a false light, something that appears to be very pure and is just, in the end, is just complete bullshit and is actually harmful. And Neo-Advaita is just like the prime example of unbalanced spirituality, of a spiritual path which will literally over time cause harm, like literally unbalance you. And the thing that makes it so hard to discern is that it feels good in the moment. Some people have just joined in. I talked earlier, I got in this very brief online debate with a Neo-Advaita teacher, and he's like, it's just a bunch, talking about his channel. He's like, it's just a bunch of nobodies talking about nothing. So that statement, it's, I am nobody talking about nothing, it instantly creates a dissociative state that is pleasurable in the sense that it creates distance and separation from the inherent stress and pain and suffering of life. The Buddha said, it's written that the Buddha said life is fraught with dukkha. And dukkha gets translated as suffering, but that's not really accurate. Dukkha, of my understanding, is that a more accurate translation is dissatisfaction, pain, stress, torment, suffering, uneasiness, instability. That fundamentally, the human experience, or the animal experience, but to be in a body is fundamentally uncomfortable. Everything's constantly changing. There's no lasting happiness in any person, place, or thing. I believe there's deep truth to that, and we're all seeking a solution from that. I believe that as well, and that's kind of the basis of Advaita Vedanta, much less Buddhist philosophy, that we're all seeking a solution from that discomfort. And some moments that discomfort's just feeling a little uneasy or a little antsy. Sometimes that discomfort is like, I'm going nuts, or the pain is so bad I want to take my life. And so Neo-Advaita provides a short-term fix, just as any other addictive behavior. Like, that's part of why alcohol and drugs can be so addictive, because they give you like relief. You ingest a chemical, you take enough, you drink enough, and all your problems are gone. If you think Neo-Advaita thoughts, like the one I shared tonight, I am nobody, doing nothing or talking about nothing, if you just meditate on that for a while, it'll give you a sense of relief. And then without a real teacher, a true teacher, a valid teacher, it's very easy to misinterpret that temporary sense of relief as like, wow, I'm experiencing something simple. When in fact, it's just a dissociation. That's part of why, that plus the fact that Neo-Advaita lies and says, this is the supreme truth. All the great teachers have taught this. And they'll cherry pick a little quote here and there to where it's like, oh my gosh, this seems true. Like, oh my God, this is the secret of the ages. This is the truth of the ages. When in fact, it's a very bad misrepresentation and misinterpretation of these classical wisdom traditions. And so it's like that combination of like, this is the highest truth, and then this temporary, pleasurable experience. And sometimes, Neo-Advaita practices, sometimes it can create states of bliss and ecstasy even. I've experienced it. Of like ecstatic bliss, euphoria. And you're like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. And that combination of like, this is the highest truth, with these different levels of pleasurable experience, it can make it very hard to let go of. And because the real work in the spiritual path is like becoming an adult. And who wants to do that? Who wants to grow up? Neo-Advaita impacts those of us who have like extreme trauma or extreme mental imbalances, who have deep suffering. Like those of us who have that and then looked to Neo-Advaita for a solution to that, we're the ones who Neo-Advaita takes really far down. because we just go for it. I went for it, with like all my being, you know, and um, and so the way to recover from Neo-Advaita is like the last thing I or anybody wants to do, which is to grow up and to become a mature, balanced human being. Because to do that, you have to kind of face, not kind of, you have to face reality. You have to face the fact that life is fraught with dukkha. You have to face the trauma, the pain from the past. It's not like you got to do it all at once, or, I'm not talking about like, you have to go on some intense retreat and like face all your darkness all at once. But I'm basically just talking about becoming a mature, balanced human being. And to do that, you have to contend with reality. And Neo-Advaita truly is a running away from reality. That's another reason why I call it an addiction, because it's when you dissociate, you disconnect from reality. And then all these interpretations get put onto this dissociative state. Neo-Advaita teachers will be like, that's it, you've got it. You've got the truth. When all someone's experiencing is just a dissociative state. Like they're not in touch with reality, they're not in touch with the truth. And it all just starts with nonsense, with these word games like, I am nobody, doing nothing. Or like, oh my gosh, this person is enlightened. And it's what I noticed about myself is as soon as I thought someone was enlightened, my discernment just went offline. Because I was desperate. I was suffering so deeply, and I'd had a lot of wonderful spiritual experiences. I'm like, I want to stop suffering, and I want to live in peace and bliss forever. And these people are like, you can have that. They say that initially, but once you get in deeper, that's when they start pouring on the nihilism, like that you are nothing and nothing exists. They don't lead with that. It's kind of like a first date where someone like puts on false airs and they like hide all their stuff. And it's only till you get a little closer in, once they've got you, that they start pouring on the nonsense, like the nihilism or the nothingness. I mean, I saw a Neo-Advaita teacher recently give a short talk that Nirguna Brahman, which is, Nirguna Brahman is like a technical word for ultimate reality, Brahman. And Nirguna means without qualities. And this guy's like, Nirguna Brahman is everything and nothing. So, he said nothing and everything. The everything part, the traditional teachers would agree, the nothing part is nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. Advaita Vedanta teachers for like 1,000+ years have said the nature of Brahman, the supreme reality, is Sat Chit Ananda, eternal, joyful, blissful, peaceful awareness. Neo-Advaita teachers have taken that and said that the ultimate nature of reality is nothing. And so this guy said, Nirguna Brahman is nothing and everything. It's very significant that he put the nothing first. No traditional, and so, and even in Buddhism, they play around with this idea of emptiness, but I mean, the Buddha didn't speak English, so it's shunyata is the Sanskrit word, or I forget the word in Pali. In Sanskrit, it's shunyata, or shunya maybe in Pali. But nothingness is a piss poor translation of that. It's a very bad translation. And don't take my word for it. Look it up. It's like this, a better translation that I've heard is like, shunyata is like the void that is full. Or such. Has the quality of paradox, at least in traditional Buddhist thought. But it's not nothing, and it's not emptiness. not in the English sense of the word. And so this guy has thousands of followers. He charges money for one-on-one sessions. He has a WhatsApp group where he charges a monthly subscription. So this person is literally earning a living peddling spiritual nonsense that's going to harm people, that is harming and will harm people. And that's kind of the state of the spiritual world. This guy is basically getting people to pay him to he's their dope dealer, and it's just spiritual dope instead of chemical dope. And for those who aren't aware, dope is like slang for narcotics or drugs. And no one who goes and who is a drug addict, no person who is a drug addict will think, when they're out like trying to score their next hit, none of them are going to think, hey, what I'm doing is spiritual and virtuous. No true drug addict is ever going to think that, because a lot of them unfortunately like get into the place where they're like stealing or prostituting themselves, or like doing horrible things to get their fix because they're addicts. So not for one, going to jail, going in and out of jail, going in and out of rehab, like it's hell. For a real narcotic addict, not one of them is thinking, hey, this is spiritual, what I'm doing. It's more like, this is hell. But with Neo-Advaita, part of what makes it so sticky is that the people who are peddling... Walter, cool, I'll get to that in one sec, thanks. People who are peddling the Neo-Advaita nonsense, who are basically peddling an addictive activity, have convinced people that it's not only is it true, but that it's spiritual and virtuous. And that's part of what makes it so hard to escape. Someone who has an addiction, again, like drugs, or people can get addicted to sex, and I've listened to some sex addicts and some of the stories of the things they've done. It's horrible. They literally are out of control and hate it. But someone who's addicted to Neo-Advaita, they think they're on the path to enlightenment. That's part of why it's so tricky and so hard to escape. Walter, my website is... I'll just, let's see, I don't know how to do chat on this. Yes, and, I mean, I'd say, what I would say is radical non-duality is one form of Neo-Advaita. My view is there's two different types of Neo-Advaita. One of them is the just inquire, which is like just practice self-inquiry. That's all you need to do. And then the other is there's nothing to do since you're already enlightened. And that's the more of the radical, quote, radical non-duality. Oh my God, radical. I mean, the fact that people call it radical non-duality is in and of itself, like, I don't know whether to laugh or to throw up. So Walter, my website is neoadvaita.org. I don't know how to do chats on this, unfortunately. Hold on one sec. I don't know how to respond with a chat. So it should be linked on my YouTube channel, but I think it's neo-advaita.org. I haven't gone on my own website in a while. And it has an email address on there. Yeah, I'll give it to you right now. It's all one word: outbeyondideas@gmail.com. Out, O-U-T, beyond, B-E-Y-O-N-D, ideas, I-D-E-A-S, @gmail.com. So just send me an email and let me know kind of your background or what, where you're coming from, and That sounds interesting and fun. So, welcome to my other live viewers. I'm about to wrap up, but if anyone, maybe you have another minute or two. Thanks for saying hi, Walter. Great question about, the thing is, Neo-Advaita and radical non-duality, there's no precise definitions for any of these things, which is one thing that differentiates all the different types of Neo-Advaita from traditional Advaita and from any traditional spiritual path. Any traditional spiritual path will have very precise definitions. And Neo-Advaita teachers, whether it be radical non-duality or the Just Inquirer, they're just basically making things up as they go along, and there's no precision and no definition, and that's why a lot of them argue with each other, and it's very hard to get. You can occasionally get one or two of them in the same room together. That's difficult, but they don't fundamentally they don't really agree on most things, so it's kind of comical. But yeah, please do look me up and drop me an email about the interview. That sounds interesting. And thank you everybody for dropping by. And that's, I think, everything I have for today. I wish everyone a Neo-Advaita free day. And the truth is out there and in there. You're probably not going to find it on a YouTube channel. And here I am on a YouTube channel. And so on my website, I actually have I have a list to a couple of traditional Advaita Vedanta teachers who can hopefully be of some assistance. Thank you so very much. Have a blessed day, everyone. Take care.